Last week, I made a post about a simple hack that helps you feel and sense more of your glutes. So in the video, I took a band that's pretty stretchy and I placed it underneath my fourth and fifth met head so that I could pull up against the band and go into a little bit of a heel elevated position. And by adding the band, I was able to elicit a much greater glute contraction as I pulled against it. So I first used this in one of my Alchemy strength classes to explore different constraints for the ankle and the foot and how that could elicit different responses up the chain. So in that same class, I did a calf raise where I had a band pulling me either into abduction or adduction, and my ankle was forced to resist that. I'm also going to link that video because I shared a bit about it on Instagram as well. As the band was pulling me into adduction and I was performing calf raises, I was having to resist that band pull and use more of the outside of my calf muscles or my peroneals. And so I was going up and down and trying to resist that force pulling me out. We also explored the flip side, which was the band pulling me in, and I had to resist that force by creating a little more subtalar inversion or pulling my foot out, getting more of that medial calf. So initially, when I put the band under the fourth and fifth met and raised up, I was thinking about having to actually pull and push into the band laterally, creating that same supination shape. But as I went through the exercise more and more to try to understand exactly what was happening, I talked to members of my academy, people in the Alchemy class, and we recently used it in a case study today. And while I think it's reasonable to expect that if the band's under the first met head, which we've seen before, there's a natural strategy to try to keep that met head on the ground to prevent that transverse arch from laterally rotating and losing the first met head. But in the case of the pinky toe that's rolling in and the fifth met that's rolling out, I think what it's actually doing is providing support for those last two met heads. So with the band on the outside, as I raise up and create that supinated shape, the band is almost supporting the fourth and fifth met and allowing me to have a nice wide transverse arch. And there's nothing better for facilitating the glutes like a big wide foot to stabilize with. So if I do the same activity and raise up without the band, you can see how my foot sort of wants to struggle through the forefoot and the transverse arch as my pinky toe is really trying to ground me. Let me get a close-up view for you. So as I go up on the forefoot, see how I'm kind of caving in because I'm struggling with the supination, but also my pinky toe naturally wants to come out and try to ground me. Let me show you from the front. So here you can see my pinky toe literally rolling and trying to reach the ground because my fifth met is really struggling to sense that awareness. But immediately, as I place the band down and give some support to the fourth and fifth met, my pinky toe sort of settles into position and I could put more weight into the whole transverse arch and feel more supported by my foot. And immediately my glute comes on. So since working through this, one of the things that I would add to this exercise is actually a wedge underneath my fourth and fifth toe to help stabilize me like you see I have here. And if you'll notice, my pinky toe actually looks relatively straight here with that wedge to push into. So if you're like me at all, sometimes you find these hacks or you do these weird exercises and you're thinking to yourself, I think I know why that works. And it felt so good and it was so helpful in my body, but I'm not really sure how to backtrack and understand the why behind it. So Alchemy in itself is a class where a lot of times that happens. It's exploring movement and concepts in your body, maybe not always having the perfect understanding, but being able to take a step back and go, oh, this now makes so much sense. And it's sometimes in the why, sometimes in the how, sometimes in the not knowing that we actually learn the most we can about what's going on with our bodies and within human movement. So I hope that explanation helped, and I hope you'll find a sense of freedom to explore movement and not always have the answers, but sometimes in the doing, come up with the perfect answer.